So the impact of nanoscience and technology today is massive, wherein you can see as of 2014, it was a $26 billion industry. In fact, some reports, for instance, Lux Research had it at $731 billion around 8 years ago. In fact, the current market report puts it at around $1 trillion across all of these different fields where all the technology is used as of today. So the growth of nanoscience and technology around the world has been massive. And just to give you some context, the nanoscience and technology patents that have been filed combined is actually having a growth rate of about 5 to 8% greater than all the other technologies in the world combined in the period of 2015 and 16. And the rise of nanotechnology can be seen in the publications and new materials that are coming up as this graph keeps growing linearly. Looking at some more specific use cases and how you could possibly use this in your fields. So let's touch upon some of these fields. Let's start with IT and electronics, for instance. So nanotechnology in IT and electronics is fascinating. Now I've touched upon some of these, and let me talk about some of the other use cases that we have and how is it that it's working. Now, nanotechnology is making a huge impact on this market by essentially enhancing the speed of computing components. Now, this is done, as I mentioned, by reducing the size of the chips. And in doing so, it's actually increasing the surface area, and hence you can load more transistors on it, and thereby increasing the speed. But in doing so, it's also reducing the amount of energy it actually takes to run these chips. And which is why every year you see that the chips become or perform better, but actually draws in lower amount of energy. And some of these application areas include semiconductors, display devices, packaging. So for example, MEMS devices, as I spoke about a little earlier, board and substrates, adhesives, solar cells, lighting, such as OLED devices, or even the LED bulbs that you can use for it to last more than 20, 30, 50 years. Sensors that you see on wearable devices today. There are fascinating applications in the wearable technology department. In fact, as of today, if you were to go into, for example, Apple or Microsoft or Google's Verily devices, which is again an arm of theirs that use some of this technology, all of them are investing heavily in nanoscience and technology because if you learn how to use these techniques, in addition to skills that you have already learned, you can make a massive impact on this field. And to give you an idea of what kind of impact the market is having specifically in this field, talking about semiconductors, the global semiconductor sales is about $300 billion per year. And almost 180,000 are actually direct, and about 6 million indirect jobs are there in US alone. So advances in this field is going to continue to grow, and you would find all of this seeping into countries in Asia. For instance, you have TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or Foxconn, which actually produces a lot of iPhones, investing heavily in India. So you have factories and industries coming up which want to produce these semiconductor chips, so we can have the manufacturing facility available where if you can acquire these skills, you could have great opportunities in this sector. Now, I also spoke about Moore's Law a little while ago. Now, you might have already come across Moore's Law, of course, which is essentially the computing power doubling every 2 years, but at the same cost. However, if you have followed the computing power right from the days where we were using Pentium processors to what you have as Ivy Bridge and so on, so now you have the 10th generation of Intel chips out there, the chip sizes have been shrinking, but unfortunately, they can only shrink so much. And therein lies the beauty of nanotechnology. So this is where you can see that all of the scaling down has happened with the help of nanoscience and technology, and it has given second wind to Moore's Law, where now you can have chips as small as lower than 10 nanometers. You even have 8 nanometer chips being manufactured. And this can load more than billions of transistors and hence increasing the speed. In the field of nanotechnology application in IT and electronic industries, of course, you have other kind of applications such as 3D printing. You could print your own material using lithium titanium dioxide or carbon nanofibers, fullerenes. This can be used to create materials which are strong, which are used in automation. You could have solar cells, which are made of metal oxides and nanocomposite materials, or flexible circuits. Now, you have all come across wearable devices such as Apple Watches, or for instance, other smart watches or fitness devices such as Fitbit and so on. A lot of these tend to have curved screens these days, and that is all the rage. In fact, if you followed Samsung, for instance, they tend to produce a lot of devices with a curved architecture. Now, what is important is you might produce a curved screen, but that would also mean that the electronic circuits within the device needs to be flexible. And therein lies your opportunity to use nanotechnology. So you can actually use cadmium cellulide nanocrystals, which are highly flexible and can be used in these flexible electronic circuits. Similarly, you can use quantum dots in QLED TVs, or you can use iron oxide nanoparticles for switches and transistors. And of course, graphene films for high-speed transistors. So that gives you an overview of what it is to use nanoscience and technology in IT and electronics. What about pharma and biotech markets? Now, similarly, pharma and biotech markets have seen a major boom. As of 2019, the global market for nanomaterials in pharma and biotech happens to be about 80 billion US dollars. So there are roughly about 200 companies out there working on commercialization of these products in pharma and bio. Around 10% or 15% of them are located in India, where they are constantly trying to innovate using pharma and biotech nanoscience and technology to enable these products. 43 of these products have been approved as nano drugs, and 100 nanopharmaceuticals are already approved on the market as of 2013. And roughly about 5.4 billion is in sales for nanomedicine in this sector. I will show you some examples of what's happening in India a little while later. Now, some of these application areas are essentially in the field of drug delivery or drug and therapy, gene delivery, imaging, biomaterials, implants. So I'll give you two examples, for instance, as you can see from the pie chart to the right. One example is something that I spoke about a little earlier, where you could technically use a nanomaterial such as gold nanoparticle. By shrinking gold down to its nanoscale level, gold is actually highly inert, which means it's not toxic to our body. So you could load a small drug on top of it, and then the gold nanoparticle can actually be sent directly to a cell, which is known as targeted drug delivery, to cure cancer, for instance, or to cure certain venereal diseases. Alternatively, you could have examples such as dental implants. Now, some of you might have gone to a dentist and perhaps have caps on your tooth or crowns on your tooth. Now, previously, the technology tended to be using titanium. Nowadays, what they tend to do is use this titanium in its nano form, which is much more stronger. It actually is completely non-toxic and stays with you for the rest of your life. So meaning that it is so super strong and so stable, you do not ever have to go and get your crown or cap replaced again. Now, again, these are just two examples that I'm sharing. There are many more things that you can do that we can talk about in depth. That was the pharma and biotech market. What about nanotechnology as a state-of-the-art tool in the automotive industry? Now, the economic potential of this field in the automotive industry is immense. So within the framework of this study, in Germany, they actually saw that the economic potential of nanotechnology was massive. In fact, there is a saying that 3/4 of all jobs in Germany tends to be indirectly or directly related to the automotive industry. And you would know that because a lot of the amazing automotive and as well as cars tend to come from Germany. And about 75% of these companies see that nanotechnology could open up new markets for them by creating better automotive devices. So, for example, you could have windshields made of nanomaterials. Your engine could have nanomaterials in them, thereby increasing its performance. In fact, if you were to watch Formula One, for instance, a lot of these use carbon fiber. And they used to use this about 10 years ago. And now this has actually trickled down to the commercial market, where today you could find carbon fiber quite commonly in the cars, where it increases the strength of the car. So in case of an accident, it's less likely to damage the car and thereby increasing the safety of the passenger in the car itself. Another place, all of you might have heard of Tesla, for instance. Now, Tesla is not a hybrid vehicle like Prius, but is a completely electric vehicle. So they need to have batteries that can last and give a certain mileage with between 250 to 300 miles. And what this means is they tend to use a lot of nanomaterials in their batteries for the technology to be able to pull that kind of mileage in these cars. Again, even your cell phones or other devices that use lithium-ion batteries today are increasingly trying to switch to graphene-based devices or battery technology, wherein these batteries can last such that you don't need to charge your phones, for instance, every day or every 2 days. It can last you a week. So you don't need to fight the milliampere fight anymore, wherein your batteries are 3,000 or 4,000 milliamperes, for instance. Now, going back to the automotive industry itself, there's a rapid increase in this market volume. So between 2012 and 15, the average annual growth was between 20 to 50%. And all of these in established automotive industries within Germany, utilizing nanoscience and technology. What were they doing? So, for example, they were using nanofilters to clean air in the interior of the car. So this was using carbon nanofibers. It increased the comfort as well as passenger wellness or product attractiveness. It was easy to clean. Other applications of nanotechnology in the cars were resource efficiency, hydrogen and fuel cells. Again, Toyota were one of the first companies to use fuel cells in the 1970s. Now you have nano catalysts out there. So I was talking about a hybrid vehicle such as Prius. I believe there's a vehicle right now that's trying to crack the highest speed that you can possibly achieve in a car with a completely hydrogen fuel cell based car, again using a nanomaterial. Now, what's brilliant about it is that it has zero emissions. Because it's not using traditional non-renewable sources such as oil and gas, it has absolutely zero exhaust emissions. And the catalysts that are used can reduce these exhaust emissions. You can use carbon fibers again to increase the safety, the active safety and the passive safety of the cars. So increasingly you have driverless cars. And for that, it's very important to have cars which are strong. So this is a basic overview of some of the technologies that are being used in automobiles. So you have tires that are used with nanomaterials out there, which are using nanopolymers. You have electronic or magnetic functionalities that are provided for sensors or solar cells that you can possibly use in automotive industries. You can use the anti-glare coatings by using nanomaterials or increase the transparency of the car, wherein you can actually see the sides of the car by reducing the amount of materials that go into it, but at the same time being highly safe. You could have electrochromatic layers, which means that at night it's completely clear, but at daytime it has a tint to the glass. And that happens naturally, again, using nanoscience technology. So this was essentially an overview of all of the exciting technologies that are going into three different fields out there. And like I mentioned, nanoscience and technology is highly multidisciplinary. So you could technically use this in any field. And there's just so much out there that you can potentially use with information that you already possess. I'm sure as you've been seeing some of this information, you're already familiar with some of them. But some of those things that you did not know about, you can incorporate into your studies or incorporate into your career to accelerate this, where you can open up new opportunities you might never have thought of previously. So let's see some of these opportunities within India. Now, in India itself, the investment of nanoscience and technology is currently at 300 million US dollars. And this was actually around 2014. So a perspective of this is the amount of investment based on GDP. And India is ranked quite high, actually, in the amount of investment in the field of nanoscience and technology. And some of this can be seen in the industries that's happening in biotech, pharma, chemical industries, agro, and so on. And this actually seeps into other kind of industries where you can find chemical industries seeping into aeronautical industries, automotive industries, those in civil or in electronics, because at the end of the day, you still need to use these materials that go into these industries. So like I said, today, some of the largest investments are coming in from multinational companies that want to invest in India, wherein they can use this kind of technology to develop chips, to develop new manufacturing facilities in the field of engineering and specifically electronic, mechanical, civil, and so on. So in August 2016, NPD actually collected about 58 nano products from 7 companies within India itself. And some of this already had technology such as waterproofing, moisture resistance, dirt resistance, oxidation resistance, protection from ultraviolet radiation, self-repairing technology, reduce energy consumption, shield protections, reduce the motor noise in engines, abrasion resistance, and so on. So there's plenty of products and industries out there already, which you may not even know of. But if you dig in, there are vast opportunities when it comes to nanoscience technology within India. And let me drive this point home even further. India is actually ranked third in the world with a share of about 8% in the field of publishing when it comes to new innovative technologies in the field of nanoscience and technology. And this was from 4 years ago. This percentage has increased even further. So it's only behind China and USA and is ahead of countries such as South Korea, Germany, and Japan. Now, the last thing is careers in nanotechnology. So what kind of career areas can you possibly explore? So in nanoscience and engineering, of course, you can explore in the field of electronics or semiconductor industries, where material science is used as just textiles, polymers, or packaging. You have the auto or aerospace industries. You have healthcare, which is increasingly important in the crisis that we are in today. So biotechnology, computing, medical fields, and pharmaceuticals. You could go to forensics. So you can have lab, which are research funded by federal or national level investments within India. Of course, you have military and national security things that you can also do in this field. Energy capture and storage. India is again ranked in the top 5 in the world when it comes to solar cell energies. So this is a massive field for you. How do you do this? Now, you can do so by utilizing or studying science or engineering and paying close attention to developments in nanoscience and technology. So some of these are fundamentals that we need to know. Some of these are fundamentals that we already have. But what do we do with this information next? So once you have the education such as technical programs or associate degrees or doctorate degrees, you don't need to be one, but that increases your opportunities, wherein the current average salary for nanotechnology today is at about 92,000 US dollars. And that is just the starting salary, and it goes way beyond 175,000 US dollars. And this is not pivoting from the field that you're in. This is just incorporating the technology within your field and learning and picking up new skills. Now, that is, at the end of the day, the beauty of nanoscience and technology. it is an ancillary skill to the fundamentals that you have already learned. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening to this webinar.